Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. In this week's video, I'm not really sure what we're going to talk about yet. I am bumping right up next to the deadline. Usually I'm at least 3 weeks ahead on videos, but unfortunately I have fallen behind in the rush to leave Delaware City. And today it is the 19th of October. I've got a video that's due to come out today at 3 o'clock, and it's 7:30 in the morning, and I'm just starting. So I'm a little behind the gun on this one, but I might as well give you a real-time update. We are in Hampton, Virginia. We have made it down Chesapeake Bay, thankfully. Chesapeake Bay is always a bit of a nightmare, but we made it through the hardest part of the journey, which is Chesapeake Bay, and we look forward. We're taking a day off today to get the video done, and then tomorrow we're going to continue on down the road. So we might as well go ahead and get right into whatever it is that I dig through and find. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. Long ago, I abandoned any notion of retaining El Jaleo as a quote-unquote traditional sailboat. There are aspects of the sailboat that we change. Normally, sailboats have a settee, somewhere you can lay down, and that was across from the table. And I took that out right away, and I put in the Dometic, the fridge and freezer, and then just this summer I added the washing machine. And in doing that, excuse me, by adding the washing machine, I now needed a place to put my drinking water. That's where I had stored all of my drinking water in previous years. And I keep my drinking water separate. I'm a little particular about my drinking water. I like to make sure it's clean and doesn't have any taste to it and all that stuff. So anyways, I'm a little bit neurotic about drinking water, and I've always kept it in six-gallon jugs, so I have 36 gallons when they're all full, and I needed a space to put them. Now, underneath the table, I had never once used this area as a table, and I knew I could store some water down there. Now, if I left the table intact, I could only get 4 of those 6-gallon jugs under there, and I like to have more than that. If I took the base of the table out, I could actually get 6 of them in there, so then I would have my 36 gallons. And I could have taken the base off and just put the top back on, but that table actually, or the water jugs are just slightly higher than the surrounding area, so I knew that wasn't going to work. So I had to come up with something to replace the table top and yet maintain that as a platform where the dogs could lay and play. This project took place at the very end of the summer, right before we were getting ready to go, and it was during the loading and provisioning phase, so there's junk everywhere. I was trying to find a spot to put everything, and I've never been known to do one thing at a time. I always like to have multiple projects going, so this is a little bit of a mess. Originally, I had envisioned this as just raising the entire platform by about 6 inches so I could fit all of the water jugs down there. Now, I did need to maintain access to the areas underneath the bench. The water maker is under there, the black water storage tank is under there. There's additional storage, I've got engine parts and that kind of stuff under there. So I needed to maintain access to those areas, so I had to make it removable. So I was thinking about making 2 2x4 frames. So if I made it all in just one shot, I knew I'd never be able to lift it out of there, but if I made it in 2 pieces, I'd be able to remove those areas when I had to, so I could still maintain access to get to the storage areas underneath. As I was building this, I quickly realized that this was not going to work. It was just too unwieldy. I don't know if that's a word, unwieldy. Anyway, it was too bulky, and it was way too heavy. By the time I got the plywood on each of these 2 platform pieces, they were going to be several hundred pounds each. And not only would it make removing them difficult, it was also they were going to be positioned on the port side of the boat, which is already the heavy side of the boat, so we'd be leaning even more to port, which is not a good situation. So quickly I abandoned this idea as just being too unwieldy, too heavy, and I had to come up with a different way of doing it. I decided to go back and explore the tabletop idea. I only had to raise it about 4 or 5 inches, and I had just enough space to get a 2x4 rail on either side and one in the front, and that would help contain the water jugs. You know, when we're pitching from side to side, the water jugs would be not flying around, which would be good. And it's a lot lighter and smaller, and the drawback to this is there is a little bit of a bump where the platform is raised, and that is on, you know, the main dog playing area, and it's maybe 2 inches, 2.5, 3 inches above the other area, but I didn't think the dogs would care, and so far they don't even seem to notice the difference. So since this frame was only going to have 3 sides to it, I did want it to be pretty rigid, so I did go with 3/4 inch plywood. And once I got it screwed to the 3-sided frame, everything firmed up nicely, and it actually worked out better than I was expecting. Last season when I was cruising, I had 3 of the square blue jugs, and then 3 of, they're like a green or a gray, something like that, taller, skinnier jugs. And the taller, skinnier ones obviously weren't going to work underneath this compartment, so I needed to find 3 more of the square ones. I had originally purchased them at Walmart, and I was hoping they would still have them. There are a couple of Walmarts in the Wilmington area, and thankfully one of them had 2 jugs, and then one of them, or the other one, had 1 more, so I was able to get the 3 jugs I needed. So I would have 6 for when I left. And it was nice because that gave us 3 more green water jugs that we could put up on deck. Normally I've got 4 blue ones up there, and they all carry 6 gallons each, so now I have 7 water jugs up there, in addition to the water tanks that I've got up front. So we can hold like 105, 110 gallons, somewhere around there in total, which is nice with the new washer. And the jugs on deck I'll use to refill the water tanks, and I also use that for showering, and I use it for filling the dog water bowl up on deck as well. So it's always nice to have a little extra water. And with the extra jugs, I can put those up top, out against the lifelines on the starboard side, and fasten them there. And that helps even out the boat's weight distribution as well, which is a win-win. I had a couple of small things to clean up before I left. Well, and a big thing to clean up, the boat itself, which I actually managed to find a home for all this stuff, which is good. But I had a nagging leak in the boat ever since I bought it, and that was on the port side. And it leaked in right above the induction cooktops in that cabinet behind there, or that cubby hole. And water would pool in there when it rained hard. And the problem was I didn't know where it was coming from, and it was going to be basically impossible to determine where it was coming from. So I didn't film it, but I actually resealed the entire hull to deck joint on the port side, and that took a day to do. I had to tape it all off and then seal it and clean it up. But that seems to have stopped the water leak for the most part. We did get one really hard rain, and I had 2 drops come in. So compared to what it was before, that's a major improvement. So that cubby hole behind there has had mold in it for a while. So I got that all cleaned out, and there was a little bit of, I had soup cans in there, so it left some rust rings on the mat that was down at the bottom of that cubby hole. So I wanted to get some contact paper in there to get that cleaned up a little bit, and also if there was a water leak, I didn't know if it was going to be stopped or not, but I wanted to get some contact paper going up the sides a little bit so that would contain any water that did manage to get in there, so it wouldn't damage the structure down below. And I also had contact paper I wanted to get into the drawers for my clothes and a couple of other odds and ends. And the one other area I wanted to get cleaned up was behind the induction cooktops and convection oven. And this, I actually did this before, but you can see in the cubby hole behind, you can see all that black mold that was on the wall and some of those rust rings. So now it's all cleaned up, and with the contact paper in there, it looks nice. And I think the problem behind the induction cooktop was partly because of that same water leak. Water was getting behind the induction cooktop. And also back there, I've noticed that some condensation does form. So there was a mold problem behind the induction cooktops. And as you can imagine, I don't remove that entire gimbaled apparatus very often. So I wanted to get back there and get it cleaned up. I got all the mold cleaned up, and you can see it is a little dark, and it used to have a propane, gimbaled propane cooktops and oven in there. So I think some of it's from that, some of it is from the mold. But I wanted to get it cleaned up and painted so it'd be easier to clean in the future. And this was just fiberglass behind there. So I knew if I painted it, the paint itself has a little bit of an mildewcide, I think is how you say it, function to it. And it would help keep the area clean, and when I did come back to clean it, it'd be a lot easier to clean it if it was painted. And that's all we have time for this week. It looks like it's shaping up to be a pretty nice day outside, so I think I'm going to get some brats out of the deep freeze, and we're going to do a little grilling later. The pups are upstairs playing right now, so I think I might join them. But if you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out tremendously, and I really do appreciate it. And I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I wouldn't make these videos. You guys really, really mean the world to me. I do mean that. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spott. Thank you guys so very much. I do have one legacy patron member. Her name is Joan Lindbo. Unfortunately, she has passed on, but she lives on in our hearts forever. And Joan loved dragonflies, and just yesterday, a dragonfly came and visited us on the boat in the middle of Chesapeake Bay. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, I hope you guys are well, and we'll see you next week.